word finally feels very, very appropriate here. This is the all-new Peugeot 508, and I've been looking forward to driving this car, and actually Peugeot making this car, for quite some time. Make sure you like this video, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe, make sure you visit newmotoring.com, and make sure you click on the little bell icon next to our channel name, because then when we upload a new video, you'll get a notification. I speak to you now from the hills above Monaco. It all sounds very glamorous, but in reality, filming a car review on the roads around Monaco is actually quite tricky because there's traffic, there are hills, there are tractors. It certainly has its challenges. The old 508 has felt old for quite a while now. I think if you jumped from a 3008 or a 5008 into the old 508, you'd really feel like you were stepping back in time. It's a very different place to be. But thankfully, this is all new. I know it's not going to be fast, it's not going to be loud, but Peugeot's most recent cars have been marked improvements, which is why I've been looking forward so much to getting behind the wheel of this thing. SUVs are okay, but saloons and estates, they're much more my thing. There are 5 engines to choose from. There are 3 diesels and 2 petrols. The petrols, they're both 1.6 litre turbocharged 4 cylinders. One has 181 brake horsepower, the other has 225. If you want a diesel, you can have either a 1.5 litre turbo diesel with 130 or 160 brake horsepower, or a 2 litre turbo diesel with 180 brake horsepower. That is what I have here. Pretty much all of the range is skewed towards automatic gearboxes, the EAT8 8-speed auto. The only engine that actually has a manual gearbox is the lowest spec 130 brake horsepower diesel. Everything else has the EAT8 gearbox, including all of the petrols. So if you want a petrol, it's going to be an automatic. To be honest, I do understand why most of the range has an automatic gearbox. It does fit with what Peugeot want this car to be, and it is a good gearbox, but not just from an enthusiast point of view who wants a manual gearbox, but just the fact that some people will want a manual gearbox and you can't have one. I think that's a little bit disappointing. I would like a bit more choice, but that's just the way it is. Now I will get to try the 225 brake horsepower petrol when I'm back in the UK in the next couple of months or so, but this, as I said, is 180 brake horsepower 2 litre diesel. It's the top spec diesel. Has 180 brake horsepower, 296 pounds-feet of torque. 0 to 62 miles an hour takes 8.3 seconds, and the top speed is around 145 miles an hour. On paper, that sounds pretty respectable. In reality, if you push the revs beyond 3,000 RPM, it starts to run out of steam. If you go beyond 4,000 RPM, the red line is 5,000. It really is fairly pointless. You need to keep the revs quite low. And also, if you rev it out too much, it gets a bit noisy. It's much, much quieter. It's much, much happier at lower revs. The 8-speed auto, I've said it before, it's a good gearbox. It's smooth and it knows the right gear to be in at the right times. Trouble is, for some reason, it just feels like with this engine, the gear ratios are just a little bit too long. I feel like you can't make the most of the torque that's low down because the gear ratios are so long, so you end up revving it out more than you'd want to. And also, unlike other Peugeots with this gearbox, which have a little M down on the gear selector down here, this doesn't have that, so you can't actually select a manual mode. You've got paddles, so you can take over, you can change gear when you want to, but there's an uncertainty there because you don't know when it's just going to go back to normal driving, when it's going to take over. I would rather that was my decision to put it back into completely automatic, because if I'm enjoying a nice bit of road, and there have been some beautiful bits of road down here, if I don't know when it's going to go back fully into automatic, it just makes me a little bit nervous. If I'm approaching a corner and I've changed down a gear for a reason and it randomly changes back up, yeah, I don't really want that. But for the most part, as I said, as an automatic, it's a good gearbox. Now, because the new 508 is based on a new platform, like for like, you save around 70 kilos in total compared to the old car. Petrol or diesel, they all weigh about the same. They weigh 1,420 kilos, thereabouts. That said, the exception to the rule is the 2 litre diesel, the one I'm in at the moment, because that weighs 1,530 kilos, so it's more than 110 kilos more than every other model. Now, the brakes have quite a consistent feel to them, which is nice. The steering, there's no real feel or feedback coming through the wheel. But the weight across all of the car's different modes is actually quite good. It's not too heavy for the sake of being heavy, it's not too light either. And the steering ratio itself is actually quite quick. There haven't been that many times, with the exception of tight hairpins on some of the roads we've been on, where I've had to move my hands around the wheel. For the most part, been able to keep them in the same place. As for the suspension, well, there's no doubt that this has been set up for comfort, really. It's very, very comfortable. It's very relaxing, very easy to drive. But when you start to push on, again on some of the more fun roads we've been driving on today, it doesn't fall apart. There isn't very much roll, and actually if you hit a bump in the middle of a corner, the wheels don't panic, the car doesn't wobble all over the place. It feels quite well composed actually. And Peugeot have worked with Michelin as well to develop a tyre specifically for this car. It's called the PSP4, and it's a normal road tyre, but the grip on offer is actually quite good. As for the design, inside and out, Peugeot have smashed it. It just looks so much nicer, so much more fresh and modern than the old 508. The old 508 really did feel tired. The interior is night and day different. You get a lot of what you get in the Peugeot 3008 and 5008. You get these little piano keys to adjust the heating, the navigation. You can change what you're listening to on the radio. And also the dials up ahead of me, it's just a screen, so I can change what I want to see. So I can see the navigation up there, I can see the rev counter, I can see my speedo. You can even turn most of it off. There's a minimalist setting, so you pretty much just see your speed and that's it. There are perhaps a few little quality issues in the sense that, you know, it doesn't rival a German car, but it feels a lot more sturdy, a lot more solid than it used to. What's good though is, as I said, SUVs, they're fine, but saloons and estates, they're much more my cup of tea. And because this is a saloon, the driving position is just better, I think, because you sit that little bit lower. Everything feels more like a cockpit than it does in the 3008 and the 5008. The thing that just takes some getting used to is the fact that all Peugeots, have small steering wheels, so you have to push the wheel lower than you'd probably want to see the dials, because you can't actually look through the wheel to see the dials. You've got to move it down. Peugeot are also using different materials. You know, it's not just piano black plastic and aluminium. They're using different materials in different ways and in different places depending on the trim you go for. And these seats as well, they are super comfortable and they feel really nice. And as for the design on the outside, I really, really like it, particularly the front lights and the front grille, the way they work together. It's chiseled without being super aggressive, but it just looks really smart. Now this will set you back around £25,000. That's for the entry level, the basic spec with 130 brake horsepower, diesel and the 6-speed manual gearbox. And prices rise all the way to £37,400. That is quite a lot of money, but that is for a first edition model. That's just for a launch edition basically. Now our drive today has been quite brief, but I will get to drive the 508 in the UK again quite soon, which will be good because you'll be able to drive it on UK roads, see how it comes with some of our more bumpier sections, i.e. everywhere, and I'll also get to try the 225 brake horsepower petrol. And I think if an engine is going to be fun, if an engine is really going to bring the 508 to life, I think it'll be that one. Thankfully though, I think Peugeot has done a good job. This is the 508 they needed. What do you think of the new 508? Let me know in the comments below. And now, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to concentrate because a road has been closed and we are driving on some of the most twisty roads I think I've ever encountered.